What is going on here? What's up, guys? Welcome back to Dacia's Digest. As you can see, I have a little bit of a new look. I shaved my head again. I have gone through periods of having a shaved head. Then I had locks. Then I had free natural hair. Then I was wearing wigs. I've gone through pretty much every hairstyle, but now I'm in the shaved head phase. I feel like it's perfect for summer. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to be extra hot. So yeah, I just have a hat on because it's not styled or anything. And because I had it loose natural for a while, my brush pattern is all over the place. So I'm just gonna keep it covered up. So you'll see it covered for the next couple of videos. But after it gets to how I want it, then I'll wear it out. So the topic of today's video is gonna be entitled Parents. I have several stories related to that. Also, I wanted to shout out that we actually have our own Reddit subreddit. It is Dacia's Digest. So if you have your own stories that you want to put there for me to read, please feel free, and I will pick from whatever you guys decide to put there. All of these stories have updates. As always, I will put all of the relevant links in the description, and let's get into it. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom I did not want her there when I got home from deployment? I, 21 male, have been deployed for the last 10 months, and I will be getting home in 1 week. My wife and I's plan was for her to be the only one to know what date I was coming back, so that when I get leave, we can go back and surprise all of our family and friends. My wife, 21 female, visited home a couple weeks ago for a family event, and while she was there, she spent a day with my mom and 2 younger sisters, high school age. My mother is very pushy and hates surprises, so much so that me surprising her by coming home would make her mad at me. My wife and I knew we would eventually have to tell her because of this, but we're waiting until the last minute because she would have told my sisters if she knew my date. Well, while my wife was there, my mom pushed and pushed, telling her she wouldn't speak to her, let the girls go places, and she had to know so she could take days off work. I don't get that part, but my wife gave her a week range of my leave a couple of weeks after I get back so that she could request off. Well, my mom texted me today telling me that she would be here for the welcome home when our plane lands. I asked if she cleared this with my wife, seeing as she apparently planned to stay with us in our 1-bedroom apartment, and she said no. I asked if the girls knew and were coming, and she said no. My mom has done a few things that presses between my wife and I, so I lost it on her. I told her I wouldn't be giving her the date that I fly in, that if I wanted her there, I would want my sisters there as well. I stopped there until she started complaining that she was a single mom who raised me on her own and that I should want to see her first. That's when I told her I didn't want her in my house at all when I first get home. I am a married, grown man now. I don't need my mom. I want to see and spend time with my wife first and foremost. She pressed further, saying, I've been here for you since before you were born. She's been here for 4 years. Eventually, trash talking my wife, saying she doesn't even have a real job and doesn't contribute. My wife is a nanny while she's in school, and she gets paid well, so she absolutely does contribute more than enough. This is where I may be the a-hole. I told my mom that I was tired of her badgering, that I wanted to come home to my wife and be alone in our home with our pets. My wife and I would not want to host her, and we wanted the house to ourselves so that we can be intimate wherever and whenever we please because we haven't seen each other in so long. My mom cried. What is going on here? She's sending me long paragraph texts every few hours about how she doesn't know where her caring son went, about how I need to let my wife go because I use her for her body, about how all I care about is my own pleasure and I have no care for my family at all. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole? I haven't responded to the messages my mother is sending, but if I get ideas from the possible comments, I might. All right, before I go to the comments and subsequently the update, That took a turn. I was not expecting him to say that to his mom. Um, but it sounds to me like he has one of those moms that's made him her surrogate husband, like those single moms who just love their son so much to an unhealthy level. And when the new girl comes in, which is his actual wife, then the mom gets jealous and she wants to still have the top spot and she wants to be the only one in her son's life, etc. But the reality is, after the son gets married, the mom is no longer the top spot, depending on, your beliefs about the hierarchy of relationships. And so, sounds like she's having a tough time reconciling that fact. But I am glad that the son has the cojones enough. Is that the word? Cojones? I am glad that the son is not afraid to stick up to the mom and express himself and also stand up for his wife. So I don't think he's an a-hole. I mean, he could have probably said it nicer, but it sounds like when you're in this type of situation where a person is just like bothering you so much over a long period of time, sometimes you do just snap. So I understand his reaction. I don't really see he did anything wrong. So let me look at the comments here. It's kind of cold over here. All right. Nerd is a verb says, good job finally standing up to her. Stop giving her info and stop talking to her. Quote, Mom, until you learn to act like an adult and stop trash talking my wife to me, I will not be communicating with you. I am very disappointed in you and how incredibly selfish and immature you are acting. End quote. Don't make your wife deal with this jerk. And OP said, I haven't given her info. She told me she was coming for my plane to land, and she didn't even know when that date was. The only info she got was from my wife and was quite literally worded as, he will likely have leave within these few weeks, but those weeks could change. Super Kitties 83 said, your mom sounds completely unhinged. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if she visited the airport daily during those weeks. Not the a-hole, your mom is sick. And OP said she won't be able to even if she wanted to. The runway we land on is on base. Inner Nothing 7779 says, you need to tell your CO and XO about your mom. Do not put it past her to try contacting your unit to get information on where you are, when you are, and how you are coming home. As embarrassing as it is, you've got to protect yourself here and probably go low to no contact with your mom for a while. And OP said she did this in basic training, called the base I was at so many times that they had to pull me from intake to call her and tell her to leave people alone. Oh, wow. She is unhinged. After that, I knew she didn't need information. She doesn't even fully know my MOS. For non-military people, MOS is mode of service, I believe, which is like basically what job you do in the military. Okay, I was wrong. MOS is military occupational specialty. But yes, it still is essentially the job that you do. I don't know where I got mode of service from. And then Lingonberry Pryor 6896, mom does not have a healthy relationship with son. She seems to leave the N off of son in her mind, saying basically she sees him as SO, which is significant other. That's what I said. She has an unhealthy relationship with him in her head. And Not Caden said, not the a-hole. Your mom is guilt tripping you. You don't owe her anything. She had the choice to raise you. She wasn't forced to. So for her to say, I've been here for you since you were born, she's been here for 4 years, is crazy to me. She's an example of a manipulative parent. Here's a paragraph from an article about manipulative parents and their signs. Quote, parents using emotional blackmail will often threaten to withdraw their love or approval if the child does not comply with their wishes. This can manifest as guilt-tripping the child, making them feel responsible for the parent's happiness, or expressing extreme disappointment when the child does not meet their expectations. That sounds just like her. And OP responded, that paragraph fits what she's been doing to a T. What confuses me is none of my mom's behavior like this started until we got married. Before, when she was my girlfriend, she always wanted her around, joked about trading me and my wife, invited her everywhere my family went. Now it bothers her when we spend time together and she isn't invited when she thinks she should or can be. And Not Caden responded, she's jealous of your wife. She wants to be close to you, platonically, of course. I've heard cases like these. She obviously cannot grasp the idea of you becoming an adult. You need to tell her you're not her little boy anymore. And OP responded, I have. It didn't work much, so I just started going low contact. Mostly keeping it about my sisters, if we will visit, and of course this, because I wasn't willing to just let her think she could step in on me and my wife, especially without consulting my wife first, considering she is the only one home taking care of our place right now. And some quietly, Ferris recommended a subreddit, r just no mother-in-law, and he said that it could help because there's other people who have dealt with situations like that for OP to tap into. And then BK Worm Trisha says, not the a-hole, at least she stopped trying to get into your home when you got more specific on how you and your wife would be greeting each other. And OP responded, well, these paragraphs she's sending me aren't what I would consider as stopping, feels more like guilt tripping. And then Bored Panda 55 responded, I'm sure your wife doesn't mind you, quote unquote, using her body when you get home. The way she flipped the narrative so quickly is insane. Very much guilt tripping to the max and not healthy for your relationship. And OP said, haha, I know my wife, and she doesn't feel like she's being taken advantage of. We share an Amazon account, so I know what she's preparing for my coming home. Boy said, I've been gone too long. Oh man, that's funny. All right. OP is active in these comments. I love it. John R. Smith 8032 said, sounds like a tough situation, man. I had something similar with my in-laws once. It's not easy to navigate family dynamics sometimes. Do you think she'd respond better if your wife talked to her instead? John Smith is clueless. There's no reasoning with this lady. She is simply jealous of the wife. There's no amount of conversations, talking, logic that can help her. She needs a therapist. That's who she needs to be talking to. That's who she needs to have a conversation with. Opie said, no, I think she would go after her more, honestly. After her telling my wife she wouldn't speak to her or let my sisters spend time with us if my wife didn't tell her when I'd visit home, I think having my wife tell her she isn't welcome would go just the same, if not worse. Not only that, but my wife is a people pleaser. She's extremely sweet and would do anything to accommodate anyone, even if it isn't what she wants. She's better about having a stronger spine, as she calls it, but I don't want to put her in a position that would make her uncomfortable. If my mom went to my wife herself, I would want my wife to stand up for herself, but I don't want her to do that for me. Yeah, I didn't think that was a good idea either for the wife to speak to the mom. I just think that would make everything worse. And another reply from OP, yeah, this welcome home thing is for soldiers, families, spouses, and kids. There isn't anything that directly says no parents or anything like that, but it is for the people who have been living with someone gone from their everyday lives, rather than family that just gets visits otherwise. I'm just gonna read a couple more comments because OP has a lot of responses in this comment section. Bored Panda 55 said, she has to be listed by you, correct, to get on the base, if that is where you are coming back to. And OP said, she would be able to get on base if she entered with my wife. She just has to be with someone who also has a military ID. With the way she presses and manipulates, and with my wife being a people pleaser, my wife would likely bring her just to get her to stop bothering her. His wife needs to grow a backbone. Hot Cheeks PCT, not the a-hole, there's a Facebook group your mom needs an invite to. It's called The Boy Moms Are Getting Weird and Incesty Again. OP said my wife's a part of that group. Pretty sure she's posted about these kinds of things a time or two. Well, at least they're aware of what's going on. All right, last comment, because I have to get to the update. Abject Donut 5152 said, "Oh my God, you need to go either no contact or very low contact with your mom." Geez, wow, that's just wow. Been there. Mom was the last thing I thought about when I got back from deployment. I mean, God forbid you get stationed overseas. What will she do then? Freaking move in? You need to nip that in the bud now. OP said, "I already don't contact her much outside of for my sisters, and neither does my wife. Our plan when my contact ends is to move a base even farther from home where we would have to fly for visits. That would take our amount of visits down a lot because we travel with our pets, but they're both large dogs and we don't want to put them under a plane, and plane tickets on top of pet boarding is expensive. If people would want to see us, they would have to come to us. Oh, and my mom refuses to get on a plane." So they already have a strategy for kind of not getting rid of her, but kind of keeping her at bay. So he does have an update. Let's go ahead and read that. Update: am I the a-hole for telling my mom I did not want her there when I got home from deployment? A few people asked to stay updated, so here is the first one. Spoiler alert, it's not necessarily a fun one. Unfortunately, because of another wife sharing our flight date all over Facebook, our return has been pushed back an entire month. Dang, that sucks. I called my wife to let her know, and we are both devastated. I only had enough time for one phone call, so I asked my wife to let family and friends know, including my mother. Yes, I know many people might not be happy about that, but again, she didn't receive a date. My wife's text to her was just that I would not be returning until a month later or more. My mother's reaction to that news has truly solidified what many comments were telling me. I was raised by a narcissist. Her text back to my wife was, "Oh, that's great. That's actually much better timing for me." What? The delusion in this one. My wife's response to my mother was, "Do not say that to OP. He is devastated that he will be gone longer, and he has been talking about wanting to be home ASAP since just a few months in. I wish you wouldn't have even said it to me, as I'm devastated by his return being delayed as well. It is extremely selfish for you to be glad he is away from home for even longer simply because it works better for you. I have never in my life heard of a mother being glad that her child will be overseas longer than what was planned." After that, she blocked my mom. Her shiny spine is really developing. It is. I have not reached out to my mother, and I will not be doing so. I won't block her, as with my sisters being minors, I would like for one of us, my wife or I, to have at least some line of communication in case some family emergency. However, I will not be texting or calling, and any of her texts or calls will not be answered unless I consider them an emergency. There are a few questions and deeper explanations from my original post, so I figured I would go into them deeper here. My father passed away when I was 6. Ever since then, my mom has sort of relied on me when it came to raising my sisters. Even with them being high school aged, it continued. When I went into the military, my mom got upset, saying things at home would be just terrible with me gone, that she didn't know how she would handle my sisters on her own, and that life would seem more pointless without her son in it every single day. When my wife and I got married and moved to my first duty station, she begged to trade my sisters off, sending one of them to stay with us every few weeks, where they would stay in our living room. She even told us we needed to purchase a hide-a-bed couch for it to work out. Obviously, that had never happened, as I told her my sisters were my sisters and her kids. It was not my responsibility to raise them. So she literally was trying to do like a 50-50 custody arrangement with her son. This lady needs help. She needs help. I think also she was trying to make it so that the sister would like be in the way so that him and his wife wouldn't be closer. I don't know. My mom and I were very close when I was growing up. I considered her one of my best friends and someone I could always go to. That changed when I got married. I also realized that some of the things she did were not healthy or good parenting moments. My mom started purchasing condoms for me when I was only 12. I'm speechless. That's weird. I mean, I don't know. That just made me uncomfortable. I mean, yeah, around that age, kids were like doing things they weren't supposed to do. Now I'm just thinking back on my own experience in school, but I don't know. It just, like, given her history, it just seems weird. Um, she was very open about intimacy with me and was not one to shy away from it. She was completely fine with me being intimate at such a young age, which did lead me to be a bit of a man floozy. Before my wife, I constantly snuck girls in, snuck out to hang out with girls and whatever else. My wife was the first girl that I brought to my house during the day, introduced to my family, invited her for dinner. My wife was also very strict with her views on intimacy when we started dating. We were friends before, so she knew I was a bit of a player. Where I viewed intimacy as something fun, she viewed it as something that should only be between two people who truly love each other. She was not down for it until a few months into us dating, and I was willing to wait for her. We still snuck around, but when she snuck me in, we quite literally played Mario Kart, watched movies, and hung out all night. When this part of me changed, it changed something about my mom for some reason. She did used to ask about girls I was sleeping with when I was in high school, but when she asked about my wife when we started dating, and I told her we weren't doing anything like that, she got frustrated about me lying. She stopped buying me condoms, which I was fine with because I didn't need them in the beginning, and when I did, I was 18 and completely fine buying them myself. Before my wife and I ever were intimate, she would come in my room and scream about how she didn't want me being intimate under her roof. I thought that she just realized that encouraging a minor to be intimate wasn't okay. Yeah, because now you're switching up your story. You started buying him condoms at 12, and now all of a sudden, now that he has a girl who he's really developing a connection with, oh, it's an issue. You can't do this under my roof. You didn't have a problem with it before. My mom also liked my wife when she was just my girlfriend. This always confused me until I read people's comments. Her going from loving her, inviting her to everything, asking where she was when she wasn't with me, to trash talking her didn't make sense to me until people in the comments of my last post clarified that it was the fact that she was my wife. Her being permanent is what my mother doesn't like. As far as intimacy blocking, my mom has happily done that since we've been married. She screeched and hid her face when I kissed my wife at her wedding. She begged us to sleep on a pallet in her living room on our wedding night. We didn't. She tried calling 3 times a day when we first moved, once around the time I usually got off work, once either during or after dinner, and once at night. Sometimes while my wife and I were mid-tango, sometimes when we were already asleep. It was very rare that I actually answered these calls, and when she realized her calls were muted, they faded away. She FaceTimed seamlessly once an hour on our first wedding anniversary. Again, I didn't answer. This is just too much. Her wanting us to host her when I first got back was not her being clueless. She knew what she was trying to do. Now that I have a new return date, my mother will not even know the possible weeks I might have leave. She won't need to. I do not plan on seeing her outside of maybe going out to eat with her, my wife, and the rest of my family. My wife will be organizing it, and I will be able to ask my sisters about days my mother is off work. That's all I have as far as an update right now. I may post more before returning just based on how things go. I can imagine I will have plenty of an update when I do actually return. So this was only 17 days ago, so I'm assuming he has not returned yet because his leave got pushed out. Let me just double check. Okay, he does not have an update, but he does have a new post that was just a week ago. So I'll read this. Not an update, but related to my post about the post having to do with my mother. Holy cow, I did not expect my post to reach as far as it did or receive as much engagement as it did. I've read almost all the comments, including comments where the post was shared in other subreddits. I'm bored and off work, so while I don't have service, I'll go ahead and type this out and post later. Addressing a few common comments. The wife that shared our dates was not someone who is pregnant with another man's baby, and I very highly doubt she was doing so to be malicious. Yes, she was aware that she wasn't supposed to post it, but it was just another case of a very young wife who got excited. As of what's been heard, she only uses Facebook to connect with family and close friends, so she thought that no one would see her post despite it not being private. Yes, it is a security issue in the military when these dates are shared. It's called an OPSEC violation. Yeah, I assume people realize that would be like having it be public knowledge of when soldiers are returning to the, of course that's a security risk. So OPSEC is a process which safeguards unclassified but sensitive information. I'm assuming it means Operation Security. Yeah, Operation Security. And he said, basically, when something is shared online, it could easily be seen by anyone at any time, which includes enemies. If someone posted dates, the wrong people could wind up seeing it and say, hey, a bunch of people who are fighting for the country we don't like are all going to be in a tube in the sky during this time, which would make it easier for us to be attacked in some way. We take this so seriously that we don't even travel together. When deploying or even moving to different areas, we all travel in small groups on different days. That way, in case we are ambushed or attacked, we don't all get attacked at once. The military is great at sugarcoating. My wife and I got married young because we planned to anyways. We did not get married for base housing. We live in an apartment 30 minutes from base because the base housing that was available to us when we moved was gross. We also often talked about getting married in the future before the military had even crossed my mind. My original plan was to propose to her when we were both 24 and out of school. However, when I did decide to join the military, we got married, had a very small wedding. We figured, why not now if it was already the plan, because I wanted her to come with me. I really don't think I'd make it through everything I'm doing right now if I didn't have her supporting me and by my side. No, I don't think I got married too young. Per my last update, I kind of got my mess around years out at a pretty early start. I really don't have a desire to go out, have one night stands, get on dating apps, or any of it. I'd much rather go out with friends and have it just be about friends and come home to my wife. Go out with my wife and come home with her instead of a stranger. Spend my days off at home hanging out with her. And no part of me wants to relearn someone. My wife knows what I like when it comes to intimacy, and I know what she likes. That, to me, makes for much more fun. That's not to say I think that people who do want those things are wrong. To each their own. It is just not for me anymore. Okay, I just want to pause there. Typically, when it comes to young relationships, y'all probably already know, I'm always against it. I'm like, you shouldn't get married so young, da 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 da. But in this case, I feel like he had to grow up faster than the rest of us, given the situation with his mom. He had to help raise his sisters, basically. His mom was buying condoms for him at 12. So he pretty much lived like that 18 to 24 life from 12 to 18. His experience got accelerated. So I feel like in this case, I don't necessarily mind them getting married at a young age because I feel like in his unique situation, he has more experience. Kind of unfortunately because of the mom that he had. Anyway, that was just a side note. Then, not a common comment, but one I wanted to speak more on. My wife's contribution through nannying is something she enjoys doing. Soon, when school starts, she is going to start working at an on-base doggy daycare during the day while the kids are still at school. These are all little jobs that my wife enjoys and doesn't do for the money because honestly, we generally don't need the extra. Okay, my boy said he a provider. It's nice to have extra for the fun things, but if she didn't want jobs, her support of me and care of our home is really all the contribution I need. Yes, I will be going no contact with my mother once my sisters are out of the house if things remain the same. If my mother does go to therapy and does self-work to correct the behaviors she has towards my wife and I would be willing to give her another chance. However, if that chance is spoiled and she goes back to her ways, it will be right back, no contact. No, my mom is not trying to marry my sisters off to get rid of them. My sisters are both extremely close with my wife, and if she started suggesting these things, I know they would tell my wife. However, I do have a very big feeling that both girls will be out regardless once they are 18. My middle sister, 17, has already started saving money, working extra, and looking at apartments in town because she wants to move out as soon as she can. She's talked to my wife about this, and when my wife is home, they sometimes drive around town to look at different apartments, and my wife has even started keeping a few easy and cheap recipes in a folder should my sister need them. Aw, that's so sweet. My wife and I have a great relationship. When we first married and moved, she started suggesting couples counseling. At the time, I didn't understand why because we didn't have any issues other than regular disagreements. However, with further explanation from my wife, I now heavily agree with her and we will be starting that when I am home. My wife's explanation being that it will help keep us on the same page and give us the tools to better solve any conflicts that we could face in the future. We also agree that it would probably be beneficial when it comes to learning ways to deal with this situation and others like it. My wife also does personal counseling. She was at one point a bit of a doormat. She grew up with a dad that had a my way or you're a disappointment mindset. Now she is still her keep the peace kind of self, but she is developing the courage and confidence to stand up. She still has a bit of a hard time standing up for herself in situations that only directly involve her, but she's gotten very keen on standing up for the people she cares about. I am immensely proud of her. I have done some and do plan to do more personal counseling. There has been a lot to unpack when it comes to my mother's antics, and I'm sure there is still more. Before my wife and I have any kids of our own, I want to make sure that I am fully straightened out and have worked on any possible subconscious issues. I want to be the dad and parent I should have had. My mother is not religious. If anything, she follows more pagan practices. I don't know much about paganism other than the fact that some Christian holidays are just variations of pagan traditions. My wife and I, however, are Christian. So while Bible verses and references that people have commented are appreciated and resonate with us, sending them my mother's way won't accomplish much. I can't believe people suggested Bible verses. You really think a Bible verse is gonna get through to a narcissist? Come on now. I do have separate contact with my sisters, but even still, I prefer to keep a small line open with my mother when it directly involves them. I know my sisters. One doesn't want to burden people with what's going on and won't say anything until after the fact, and one is a panicker who would absolutely leave her phone behind or just not think to reach out at all in the heat of the moment. My wife also has separate contact with my sisters. The oldest of the two calls her at least once a week to ask her about beauty tips, update her on the latest high school drama, or ask advice about boys, mean girls, and more often than not, dealing with my mom. The youngest does reach out and chat sometimes, but she is in her I'm too cool for anyone but my friends phase at the moment. My mother has tried to reach out more. She sends messages every other day, but I haven't read them much more than skimming for something I actually need to know. Newsflash, nothing yet. I haven't responded past my original post. For those that have commented or sent a chat where we joked about this, here is the part that some may see as NSFW or TMI. Skip if you'd like, but I won't be going into any sort of gory details. Okay, hold on. Let me skim through this first to see what he... Oh, okay. I skimmed through it. Basically, I mean, you could read it on the screen, but basically he's just commenting on the whole Amazon account, wife ordering things to prepare for him to come back home, that whole thing. So read on the screen if you'd like. I didn't expect for that first story to be so long. I actually had planned on reading 4 stories in this video, but I'm just gonna do one more that also has updates and then the palette cleanser, and we'll end this and save the other 2 stories for a different video. All right. My parents assume they are going to move in with me when they are old. I was on the phone with them this morning because they called after I texted them an update on my husband's and my house hunting adventure. I am currently pregnant with baby number 3 and live safely 15-ish hours away from these people who birthed and raised me while simultaneously messing me up mentally and emotionally. Okay. It's interesting that she's saying she was on the phone with them and she was like updating them on the house hunting adventure, because she also says like they messed her up mentally and emotionally. Like, for people who have relationships with their parents like this, I just don't understand why they are so involved with them. Like, if someone messed me up mentally and emotionally, I would not be texting them just casually about like house hunting updates. I don't know, it's just odd to me. Yeah, anyways. Oh, her next sentence: why I stay in contact with them nowadays is becoming more and more of a mystery to me. Okay, at least she's aware. But here we are. Well, while looking at one of the houses I was describing online, my dad asked where would they stay in the future. Stupidly thinking, as a guest, I mentioned one of the extra rooms could be a multi-purpose room. If you have an air mattress and you're coming for a visit, there you go. This house has 4 bedrooms, 5 if you count one of the rooms on the main floor. He then asked about permanently, further in the future. I said, permanently? He said, when I retire or sometime after that, you know, stairs won't be your mom's and my friends around then. What? You just invite yourself to someone's house to live? Me, you think you will be living with us? Entitled Dad, of course. Me, no. Entitled Dad, we can help with the kids. Me, no. My mom, remember? We always talked about this when you were younger. Me, no. Dad, what? Are you gonna put us in a home? Me, you'll make friends. Dad, well, that's not nice of you. Me, I never said it was. The discussion ended after that. This is funny because a lot of times one of people's main reason for having a kid is like, oh, who's gonna take care of you when you're young? Which is one of the top 5 most terrible reasons for having a kid. But it's just ironic that in this case, like, that's clearly not what's gonna happen. Wow, they legit just invited themselves over, no conversation, no nothing. Let me read some of the comments. Static Start quoted, we always talked about this when you were younger, end quote. Because a child between 3 to 14 is really going to understand the concept of a nursing home and sending your parents away. Good job on telling them no. OP responded, my mom has always brought up living with me when she's old, and I always said nope, even when I thought she was joking. I did entertain the idea at one point. If we lived on a big enough lot, they could have a trailer on, never in the same house, but I always kind of knew that wouldn't be a real possibility. It very nearly almost happened a year ago, but then my dad decided that God has called him to stay in our home state, in the most haughty of voices. Okay, thank you, Jesus. Oh, this is an internal set. 6564 responded with a template for her to send to her parents. As an adult, you are responsible for your own living accommodations for the rest of your life. Talk with a financial planner and get your future in order. HDMX539 said, Jesus took the wheel of your dad's life and pulled over. That is funny. And then Stillin McR fan said, even if you welcomed the idea, to me it would be a discussion of what their funds were to buy a house together that fit everyone, not just them shacking up with you whenever they choose. And OP said, that was sort of the idea we all came up with last year, but I guess they changed their mind now that my mom has retired. Also, my dad is a haughty Christian man who believes God is calling him to become a preacher in my home state. So their plans to move to where we are got postponed. Not that I mind, of course. Big Bura said, why maintain contact with such people? OP says there's a long history of mess and OP keeps going back into the mess. There's a saying about doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Someone said, because it's really hard to accept when you have crappy parents because they're still the only parents you have. It's natural to want your parents to be good parents, even if the reality is that they aren't. It ain't hard for me to accept. I'll just say that. OP responded, I go through long stretches of low to almost no contact with them. When we started talking again, it seemed all normal. Then they pulled crap like this. I'm currently doing minimal contact. My brother was in the hospital yesterday, so I was communicating for updates. He's fine. It wasn't anything too serious. Back to minimal to almost no contact. All right, so I'll go ahead and go to her update. Update on my parents assume they will live with me when they are old. My 29 female, husband 28 male, and I are house hunting as we are expecting our third baby in November and are hoping to move out of our trailer park by the end of the summer. That sounds like a lot of changes at once. We were interested in a house that was essentially my dream home. Victorian, built in 1900, but completely refurbished on the inside with all the original wood floors and detailing. Gorgeous. A house like this would easily be $200K last year or the year before, but the housing market is dropping and we found it for approximately $140,000. We live in the Midwest. $140,000 for a whole house, a whole refurbished. I need to go to the Midwest because you can't get anything for $140,000 in Texas, where I'm originally from, or in DC, where I currently reside. If you do, it's gonna be all the way in. You're just not getting anything for $140,000. Not to these specifications. So she said it's of 4 to 5 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms. I wonder what the square footage is. Anyway, my parents the other day asked where they would stay when we come to live with you. This was never a discussion. They just always assumed they would live with me when they are older. I always said no. Well, we messaged the finance person about what the monthly payments would really be. On the app, it estimated $950 a month. We figured we could swing that, but needed to know for sure before putting an offer in. She came back with over $1,000. Not doable for us. We are going through a program and have a grant, so we aren't rich. Lower middle class at best. Thankfully, we have another house we had in mind, a craftsman style built in 1920, with built-ins, wood floors, and a nice sized fenced-in backyard. The basement even has a slightly finished room, perfect for hiding from storms and tornadoes. And it's $20K less than the dream house. It's just a little smaller and bedrooms were pretty small, but it's something I was willing to deal with. We saw it before we saw the dream house. Well, when updating my parents on the house situation, my mom all but threw a fit. You don't have to go with the first house you see. Me, it wasn't. You can wait until something else comes up. Me, actually, no, we can't. Some weird law was passed in our state in regards to realtors, and our realtor wants us to find a house before it goes into full effect in July/August, which just gives us more incentive to find a house pronto. So far, no other houses have popped up in our area in our budget. Mom, you're going to have your third kid. Where are you going to put him? Me, bunk beds are a thing. Mom, are you going to sleep in the basement if you have more? Me, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Mom, it's so tiny. Me, it's bigger than what pictures show. But yes, compared to the dream house, it's definitely smaller than that, but it's also more realistic. I knew what she was really worried about. Where will we stay? But she didn't say it. She started looking at other houses on the app and tried to bring them up to me. They were all houses we had already looked at or were too far away from my husband's work. She was really trying. My dad was pretty chill about the whole thing. She even brought up a house that needed serious work. I said, we want to live in the house, Mom, and we don't want a money pit. She practically growled at me. The call ended soon after that. And to add for all of those explaining the realtor law thing to me in the comments, thank you. My husband did explain it to me as well, but I do better with reading information than hearing it. Also, I mentioned this in a few comments, but it might be buried soon. The Craftsman is not looking doable for us either, unless it goes down in price by like 10K. We only qualified for 3% down in our program, so we would still be paying more than we can or want to each month. We are looking at other houses, some a little further away from my husband's job. It seems all the more affordable houses that are in decent shape are almost an hour commute from my husband's work, which is something we are okay with. We aren't overly happy about it, but are willing to roll with it because it's not the worst thing in the world. I'm not gonna lie, if I was in their situation, I probably would not be looking to buy a house right now at this exact moment. They have a third baby coming in. The money situation seems a little bit shaky, but they did not ask me. So, that is the second story. I will go ahead and go to the palette cleanser. So this will be the last read of today's video. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get into this last story. This is from the Malicious Compliance subreddit. Only one set of keys for the hotel. I used to work at a hotel on a large property that did a lot of business conferences. We had golf buggies to get around, 10 different conference rooms, plus lots of other hotel facilities, storage rooms, etc. Upper management had a strict rule that important locks could only have one set of keys. Upper management also liked to save money by never fixing things when they broke. It must have looked good on paper. One week we had a big spending client who had booked out the hotel for the week. Night one, our sales team had got the times wrong for their dinner of several hundred people, so all available staff were sent over 2 hours early to start setting up. The hotel's general manager announced he would be over shortly to see how things were going, which was almost unheard of for him. What he found was about 20 staff standing around outside the venue. The conversation went something like this. General manager. Let me see what voice. What voices do I want to use? Okay. I see. I know. GM. Why is everyone standing around? Supervisor. Soup. We don't have the keys. We sent a staff member looking for the other supervisor who has the keys now. GM. Where are your other sets of keys? Soup. We've only been given the one set of keys. GM. Why don't the staff have a radio on them? Soup. Radios have been broken for over a year and never proved to be replaced. GM. Why did you only send one staff member to look for them? Soup. We only have the one working golf buggy. Dang, they are in need of some help. GM grumbles and sends another staff member off on his buggy to look for the keys. Eventually, after everyone was standing around for nearly 20 minutes, the keys turned up. The GM was stressed out of his mind that such a big client might be kept waiting. For the supervisor, it was just another Monday. The Malicious Compliance, the supervisor had access to a backup set of keys that they were strictly forbidden from using. Usually, in a situation like this, they would quietly use the forbidden keys and everything would go smoothly. But because the GM decided to be there, they didn't mention the forbidden keys, causing delays and panicking management. Fallout: the next week, each supervisor got their own set of keys. A few weeks later, we got radios for the department. Upper management also started checking in on how things were going from time to time. Apparently, making rules without knowing how things actually work isn't such a good policy. All right, well, thanks for sharing, OP. I always love a good malicious compliance stories. And when people I hate when bosses come in and they try to change things and they don't really know how things go. But that's a good one. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.